Good evening, fishy friends, and welcome to another episode of the Fishing Report. Hey, we are here with Captain Massa tonight. We're going all the way down to Georgia. Last leg of the fishing reports for the night. We still got some awesome prizes coming your way. So let's just jump right into that. Captain Massa's been working his tail off all day. He is the assistant superintendent of the McIntosh County School District. That's correct, right? Didn't I nail that?
Nailed it, my friend. Nailed it.
So he's a charter captain and the assistant superintendent. So my guess is when you go on his boat, you call that number on the screen, you're probably going to learn something about fishing. How you doing, sir?
Another great day in McIntosh. I tell you what, I'm excited and pumped to be here, my friend.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that the school district needs you a lot and probably ask a lot of your time. You can't go fishing every single day, right?
Unfortunately not.
Well, as we always do, before we get into the audience questions, we're going to jump right into the 2-minute bite. And I know, as I put in the description, you have been absolutely on fire down there in Georgia. The 2-minute bite, you know this, but they might not, is the fish that's biting the most, the bait that you've been using, and the technique. So, floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, here we are, and the temperature's starting to warm up. Even though we have a little cold snap here late, mid-March, it's still been a unusually warm summer in the or winter, and the water temperature.
Yeah, Freudian slip there.
Yeah, I did. It felt like summer some of those winter days, but it's been an unusually warm winter, and the water temperature is warm. And so if you're fishing the coastal Georgia area, you're going to want to start targeting outside of the creeks. In that wintertime, they're deep in there, but they're already out. And we're finding a lot of fish in the mouths of the big creeks going out into the big water, I would call the bay, the estuary, the sound is what we call it here. Doughboy Sound is specifically where I'm fishing at. And so anywhere a larger creek is emptying out into there and there's structure on the side, that's where you're going to find a lot of the redfish, trout, and now all of a sudden some flounder are showing up with more numbers. I caught flounder pretty good all winter, but now you can definitely go out, and if you're a flounder fisherman, you can start targeting them. So trout, redfish, that's my love and my passion, and that's what I'm after. So that's what I'm really targeting. They're there and they're in that big water. Right now, what seemed to happen, though, is that they're turning a little bit away from shrimp. A shrimp always is going to work, and you put one enough to a fish, he's going to eat it. But what I'm finding is that those juvenile pogies are fire right now. And I'll tell you, I always wait and to cut open the belly of a fish. Every time I clean one, I'm cutting it open and seeing what's inside of it and seeing what they're feeding on. And it was about 3 weeks ago, I had a pretty nice sized trout, opened him up, pogie. So I knew that it was time, and I've been floating those pogies, and it is fire right now. So you got to tune up your cast net skills, find that school, it's easy to get a live well full of pogies. Now, you're not going to get the numbers that you might, during midsummer or other times when they're really popping on those shrimps. But what you are going to find is some bigger fish, big bait, big fish. So if you're patient and you're floating those pogies by, man, it has been fire. And not only for the trout, but for the redfish too. So that's my first thing. I'm looking for pogies, and I'm going to put some in the bait well, and then I'm going to those big areas near the sound. And if you're going offshore, you still got some they're catching some black sea bass. They're catching some big reds on the reefs. Just various offshore fish. I haven't had a lot of chances to go offshore. And then inshore is coming the black drum. big black drum. If you want to go on a big black drum trip, now's the time. It's
Nice.
only going to get better for the next couple of weeks. We're finding some big black drum, and with them mixed in some big bull reds. It's a little early for that big bull red run, but it is right on time for that black drum run. So
So
you've got
let's
everything you want.
before we jump into audience questions, and guys, get your questions in because I can ask questions to Captain Massa all night. I mean, but your questions are always preferred. But you talked about the pogies. How do you rig a pogie? How do you hook it? What are you running underneath? How do you what's your setup look like?
Well, you know me, I am a jig head guy, but not for a pogie. I'm waiting to run that pogie when the water's running pretty hard. That's that an hour after the high tide and it's going out, or before it's coming in, not when it's slowed down. This is a run that pogie down the bank on a cork, on a popping cork. So I'm rigging a popping cork, but I do put a very small jig head, as small as I can, just to get him to swim down. I want him to be able to swim as much as he can, but yet still get him to go down in the water column. I don't want him pinned to the bottom, but that's my preferred rigging. Now, sometimes I'll take them through the bottom lip, through the top, right through that hard part in the nose. I like that, depending on if I have a jig head on, or through the back behind that dorsal fin, so he's just swimming around like that. So both ways. I just trying it out. One time I'll do it this way, another time I'll do that way. Once I catch a fish, though, that's what sticks with it.
Yeah. So do you how about the retrieve? Do you sort of let the current do the work? Do you keep it moving? I mean, I know with a shrimp you kind of want to pop it, but does is a pogie a pretty stout bait fish? Will it kind of stay alive and do its own thing?
I'll tell you what, a pogie's sensitive. If you're not having your live well just right, you can have a live well full of dead pogies and they don't take a beating. Now, would I give it a little pop or two? Yeah, and especially if I know he's near the end of his existence on that rig, and I'm constantly changing. If he doesn't look like I'll take him off and throw him out as chum and put a new one on. When you catch pogies, you're usually catching them in numbers. I keep the freshest bait on I can, and if it's 2-3 casts tops, and he's done, he's just not very lively, and it's okay. I don't mind that at all. Pop a new pogie on there, fresh as you can, and let that thing float down just as natural as possible. And again, maybe the third cast, if I've been a little bit feeling like he's not doing his own thing, I'll give it a couple pops, but I'm not really trying to attract the fish to me in that way. Not when the current's moving. A little different action when the current is an hour before dead low, or after high, and the current stopped. Then I'll put a pogie on a jig head with no cork, and I'll throw them out there. And you know, I've said in the past that my friends tease me about bottom fishing, and what I consider that is throwing it out there and letting a bait soak and cut bait, but it's not quite that. I'm dragging them along, and letting them, flounder at the bottom and getting them in. So whole different when the tide's slower. It's going to be on the bottom, moving towards the boat, and then fan casting. But as that current's moving, what I'm doing is I'm using an adjustable float, and I'll throw it out. I'll see where it's hitting the bottom, and then I'll make that adjustment where it's just off the bottom. And then the fan cast is back and forth to you. Then I'll go a little deeper afloat, and then just keep going until you can figure out exactly
what current. Casting up current.
Yes.
Okay.
Up current and come down, and then just keep going like this until you find the zone where they're in.
Got it. So, guys, we have about 10 minutes to ask your question. Prize for the night is 2 packs of old school Tackle Company soft plastics. We have a 3 3/4 hammer and smoking shiner, and we have a 5-inch jerk shad, which is a really slim profile. So if you're down there in Georgia, I think both of these baits would probably work, but both of these baits would probably work in a whole lot of places.
Absolutely.
Soft plastic with a paddle tail on it. I mean, I tell people all the time, if I was stuck on a desert island, I'd probably I'd get a 3/16 ounce jig, 3/16 ounce jig head and a pack of paddle tails, and I'd be good on food for quite a while. But going back to pogies, you mentioned the cast net, right? I learned to throw a cast net, but it was not a pretty process, right? It took me a lot of tangling up the cast net and making mistakes. There's a learning curve to that, and if someone doesn't know how to do that, can they pick up pogies at the local tackle shops?
No, not us. That's not really an option. As the water temperature warms up and the mullet come in, you could pick up mullet, and that's my number one favorite bait is a finger mullet. Now, if I had anything that I could choose from over a shrimp, a pogie, anything, if I can get finger mullet, that's what I'm going for. Again, you limit out some of the fish that you might have caught on a shrimp that might be a little smaller, but you're going to get more quality fish on mullet, I think, than any other bait. So you can get mullet, but not too much pogies. They just don't last. They're not something you keep in a bait well too long. Not that long. So, some people have a lot better luck, but I definitely don't.
So with the seasons changing a little bit, we're into March, and growing up in Georgia, I know, when March comes, winter's pretty much over. I mean,
Right.
Honestly, as I got older living in Georgia, I lived there till I was 27. Really, February winter was over. But what can we expect in terms of that transition? Are you fishing a different tide now? What kinds of things are you, as an angler, are you going to adjust as we go full into spring and into the warmer months?
That's a great question, and I always consider February, March being the toughest months out there, and it's because the fish are scattered. I say they're out on the big water and in those bends near the sound. However, some are still up in the creek, so they're spread out. And my technique really right now is a run and gun. Where I might spend my time at 3 good drops, it might have to be 4, 5, 6. It doesn't matter. I'm going to spend a lot more time searching. That's my technique. Is I'm going to sit in there and I'm going to use that eye pilot as effectively as I can. I'm going to go to a spot and I'm going to work that whole bank. I'm not going to stay in one spot very long, and I'm going to work that whole bank, and then I'm out of there. And so if they're either there or they're not, and so keep moving, and stay patient. When
You're a
you work
Rodan guy. You don't have an eye pilot.
What's that?
You're a Rodan guy. You don't have eye pilot.
I got 2 boats, my friend. One's got an eye pilot. One's
You
got a
still have that second boat?
Yeah. Well, when I'm on the big boat, the Rodan, you're right.
Yeah.
But I'm working it, and I'm being patient. When you do get to a spot, work it thoroughly, because the difference between catching fish and not catching fish could be 15 feet. And that is so true. I've found it so many times that they're over here, a couple cast over here. After you move the boat 20, 30 feet, there they are. So if you really feel comfortable about where their structure, good water flow, clear water, and there's probably fish there if you caught them there at that tide, but they might not be at that exact spot in your little playbook. It might be 100 yards down the bank. So run and gun, my friend. That's the fun part.
We got our first question of the evening. I like this question. Rodney asked, "Who is your mentor in first getting started in fishing?"
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, I got my first boat from my neighbor, and I got to give it to him for actually getting me into the boating world. I mentioned before that my first water was I was a diver and I was a spear fisherman, and that's what I did. And I'd always hook and lined it, but not exclusively. I was a diver, and my buddies and I, we would go to all over and dive. And when I got to Georgia, finally got settled in, he had a boat for sale. It was just I think it was a 17-foot center console with a little 90 horsepower on it. And you know, I got to give him the credit because that's where I fell in love. Once I had a boat, that was it. I've always had one since. And then I've got so many friends here in Georgia that are fishermen that I can't just say one. I fish with a lot of gentlemen that are just top-notch guys, and I've learned from each one of them. So I don't want to leave anybody out, but I will say that as a whole, the fishing community in Darien is good. They're good to each other. They're not afraid to help out their circle of friends. We're not trying to give out every spot, but everybody that is I consider a friend of mine in the fishing world has been so good to me, and appreciate every one of them.
Great that southern hospitality extends into fishing.
Yep.
Carl Ward asked, just tuning back. Sorry if this is already discussed. When sheephead fishing, you ever use bottom sweeper style jigs?
I do. A bottom, that angle and the way that hook sits on a bottom sweeper, if we're talking about the same thing, really keeps sometimes getting it caught up in those rocks. If you're on the bottom, if you're going to get into a shell, you're going to get into a rock. And what I find is that's when I start picking up those flounders. So I love it. I always have them in my tackle box. That's a staple when I know that I'm not going for trout. I'm either going for redfish, flounder, and I'm staying on the bottom. But if I'm coming off of the bank, shooting for a redfish off the bank 20, 30 yards, and then I feel like there's a nice drop off and I'm going to go for a trout, I'm just going to go for a trout eye, something with an eye and something that I can lift off, jig back to me without hitting the bottom. And you just got to keep trying stuff. Part of the run and gun is you can't get settled into one thing. I found myself just going so far to the right with only jig heads and left a lot of a fish on the table because I wasn't using those corks. And so you've got to find a balance. And the balance is 5 rods. They're all rigged something different. That's me. If I'm going out by myself, I'm bringing a bunch of rods so I can go into that spot and say, 20 casts with this one, 15 casts with that one, and I'm just going to keep trying.
It's a great thing that you brought up because I think there's such a fine line in fishing where you can't get stuck on anything, right?
That's right.
The fine line is you also don't want to give up on a bait before you've really worked it thoroughly and in different ways. I know I'm guilty of the latter a lot of times. What's the best way to say this? I'll stick with a bait sometimes an entire trip, and work it slow, work it fast until I can get it dialed in to catch fish. And sometimes it pays off. Other times, other people will switch and they'll show me that I made the wrong decision. But it's interesting. That's always a decision that we weigh as anglers. Do I try something else or do I work this bait a little faster? If it's, a confidence bait for me, for example, would be like a suspended twitch bait or a little jerk bait, right? And do I work it faster? Do I let it sit longer? And that will, changing that up a lot of times will produce fish.
That's why I like fishing with a partner and somebody else is that we got 2 people going and with something different. Very rarely will you find on the boat that we're both throwing the exact same thing, doing the exact same thing. We're both trying, and then one's jumping on board when we finally work. So
yeah,
when it's working, we might be on the same pathway, but when it's not, we're definitely varying it up. But you're right. That's a tough balance that you have to have. Don't give up, but don't be afraid to switch it up either.
Guys, you got about 1 minute to get a question in before we let Captain Massa choose. Right now, it's just between Carl and Rodney. So, and their questions are just, So, no, you guys always ask awesome questions. But what I was going to add, I totally forgot my train of thought. Um, I can't remember. Um, but this is a different question I was going to add. What's a big flounder that down there in Georgia?
We've got some doormats, yeah, doormats. But for me, if I've got a flounder that's 20 inches, I'm happy as all get out. Now that's
That's a
not
good one.
everybody's, but we've got them here and much bigger than that. But you get a 20-inch flounder, you're in hog heaven, in my opinion. So
I think a 20-inch flounder is big anywhere you are.
okay, I'm glad to hear that.
I think so. I mean,
We talked, with a big trout here. For me, 22, 23 inches, we're all high-fiving and
which you
going
got
crazy.
recently. You got a
But
20. How big was it?
I caught
24,
a
right?
here. I would say 21 because I'm very conservative, but he was closer to 22. But I'll round down to 21, and to me that was like a trophy of all get out. But you look online and you go to the Gulf, and you're seeing 27, 30-inch trout all the time, and it's just a different world. So
And
depending
we grow them big up here too, man. I mean, for some reason, and I've heard this before, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard me say this before. But a good friend of mine once told me that the outer expanse of where a fish migrates, you often see the biggest fish. Right? So if you're at the northern point of where speckled trout migrate, which is where we are, you often see a lot of big fish, and it also could be why you get big fish out in Texas because that's kind of the western furthest where they expand. But I guess nobody wants to give Carl or Rodney any competition, so we'll go ahead and put up both of those questions. Rodney says, "Who was your mentor in first getting started in fishing?" And Carl asked about the sweeper jigs, bottom sweepers for sheep's head. Which one is your winner for the 2 packs of old school tackle company base?
Well, what I'll go with is I love the sweeper jig because I love tackle and I love to spend too much money and have too much. So I like that one, but I'm going to really go with who was my mentor because it
You
just
are going
gives
to
me,
go with a little curveball. Okay, all right.
yeah, it gives me an opportunity to shout out to the people of Darien and our community and the friends that I've made and everybody that has contributed to me being where I am. I could never be as successful or as pumped up about fishing without them because it takes a lot of people really sharing information or it takes too long to learn it all. You've got to lean on your friends and listen, be patient, and ask for a lot of boat trips with them. And I got them. So every time I've ever wanted to go, there's been someone that says, "Jump in the boat with me, Massa," and that's made me feel at home and appreciate Darien more than they can ever imagine.
Good stuff. Carl says, "Nice job, Rodney." Uh, Rodney must have had a swing of emotions. He was probably like, "Oh, yay!" But
On there.
yeah, he said, "Thanks, Captain Massa." Wow, Captain Massa, your joy is always such a wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate having you be a part of the fishing channel. Um, and I cherish these times every month. So thank you again, everyone who asked questions that tuned in. Thank you so much for tuning in and for participating. Captain Moss, you want to close us out?
I sure do. I've always wanted to have a sponsor, and I'm not quite a sponsor, but I finally broke in, and I'm now part of the Chums Pro staff. I know it's simple, but man, I wear these a lot. I've worn them for a while. I have their wallet. It's a very simple wallet that is made out of surf pants kind of material. It has 2 zippers. My kids tease me a little bit about it, but I love it, and it's been a great wallet for me. And I've lost too many glasses, but now, bam. If you've looked at all my videos, you'll see that my glasses were always here. And a simple change. I know that it's not much, but I'll tell you what, Chums has been good to work with. So check them out and get a pair. You won't be disappointed. The product's a good product. and their wallets, lifetime guarantee. All I
Man,
have
show me that wallet. I'm always looking for a wallet.
at
Like
one
I've gone through so many
back,
wallets trying to get the right one, and
brand new. Yeah, I love it. I would pull it out right now, but it's not right on me. But I'll tell you
it's got
what,
too much money in it. You know, it's just.
well, I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, that's
And
right. You do work for a school district.
last but not least, great job to the fishing channel. I always have to shout out to you guys. Great content, all the captains there. Another place for me to learn about fishing from all over up and down the coast, and just a pleasure to be part of this experience and the learning adventure. So if you want to learn about fishing, this is a great place to be.
Well, thank you so much, Captain Massa. Yeah, I'll let people in on a little insider story that happened today. If you're watching, you may know Captain E down in Southwest Florida. He's going to fish a tournament in Jacksonville, and the northern border of that tournament is about 45 minutes south of where Captain Massa lives. So he asked me, he's like, "Do you guys have anybody in that region?" And it was really cool to be able to connect the two of them and have Massa kind of shed some tips and pointers and help them out for that tournament. But I love doing this job, and getting to work with people like you. So thanks so much for that, Captain Massa. Everyone, we are at the end of our night. Thank you so much. Thank you for your continued support. We literally, this is the kind of work that you literally couldn't do it without the people that follow. So, there's a lot of people that say we literally couldn't do it without you, but in this case, it's absolutely true. So thanks so much. Bruce chimed in, and I love getting new people like Bruce. Bruce, I don't think I've seen you on here before, so welcome and thank you so much for watching. But I can go on and on thanking everybody, and I probably still couldn't capture enough of how much I appreciate it.
Hey, Bruce DeVerger there. He's one of my friends, and I'm proud to say that I've fished with him, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks so much, Bruce. And if you've gotten to fish with Massa, I'm jealous because I haven't gotten to do so. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night. We will see you guys next week, next month for Massa, and next week for our regional fishing reports. So thanks, everyone, and have a great night.
Have a great night, my friend. Thank you. Peace.